Actually, in the first middle of April, multiple people started. The first the three ones were not engineers.
Okay.
One was the head of DevRel.
Okay.
Super important. Like he worked there, obviously. Different, especially I worked a lot on documentation and things like that.
Yeah.
Another one was head of design.
Okay.
And he did design, but a lot of general work also. And a super important one, which I advise everybody that is a non-technical founder, was head of operations. And she is taking care of everything that I would probably forget and would do wrong. And that's just super amazing to hire somebody like that. Everybody, when they talk with founders that are technical, they don't have a non-technical co-founder, tell them, get somebody who's not technical, who can think about all the stuff you're probably going to be horrible in. And that's was, as I said, super important. Okay. I think if it's like you have to be very careful how you monetize your product. I think it's like if you're open source, you can do it. Obviously, like described earlier, you can do it in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make sure that you find a way to make money by still making sure you provide the best value for your community, and that actually works very well for how they're using the product. That if you again use open core and you take away the most important functionality because you have to make money somehow, but then your product becomes unusable. So like monetization is really one of the hardest parts there, I think. That we have to think of very, very, very properly through very early on. Maybe it's going to turn out to be wrong. Luckily, to be honest, like the ways I want to monetize end-to-end, all of them seem to be working quite well for now, but we're going to see in the long term what's going to be out there. That's a good question. Like I said, I mentioned before, we're doing a very bad job right now, and I'm really sorry for that. So very sorry for everybody who opened the PR. We didn't merge it yet. What I will probably do is probably after a week, if I did not hear back, I will probably just ask if there's anything missing, if there's anything that I can help to move it forward with, something across that lines. Because then you say like, here, you want to help to make sure you're very interested in doing it. There's also a nice way, better than asking why didn't it get merged, because the answer is very obvious. Like we really would like to do it, but we don't have enough resources. So was one of my favorite open source projects. It's not always approved open source anymore, but I really still like Elasticsearch and Kibana. I think they're really amazing. They're just great. Like I used them so much in the past, so really, really like them. I think there's a lot of other projects I like, but I think what I think is great for them. I think they were open source. They had some issues. I think they did a lot of stuff right generally with the company. What they're doing generally is I'm a really big fan of the company and of the projects. One of the most important ones and the most asked for feature is user management. Right now, end is not great usable in bigger setups because there's one user or no user, depending how you want to see. They can do everything. So you can really not work with multiple people. If I add the credentials for my Gmail account, everybody who has access to end could read my emails. So that's really bad and horrible. That's why we are working on user management right now to make sure that people can have like one instance with multiple users. Then they can share workflows. They can share the credentials. They can say, okay, use the credentials, but not change them or not see them and stuff like that. We have multiple iterations planned. The first one, the first basic version will hopefully be released, I hope in the next few weeks. And then we have multiple steps afterwards. I think that's one of the main things there. We have a lot of UI improvements. Like I said, one we're going to launch today or tomorrow. And it's going to look much more professional, nicer, and slick, and has a lot of UI improvements to make it easier to get started and also make it clear what's happening. We also still wanted to launch one thing we're also working right now is to making it easier, more efficient to create nodes. To make sure that the nodes are more or less code-free. That is quite important. Then there's updates to the parameters, how you select data. Also, binary data is another important one that you can use large amounts of binary data. That's also something that should be released in the next few weeks. So there's a lot of stuff. Also, allowing people to load workflows that other people shared in the UI. There's a lot of stuff
receipts, like receipts sort of thing, right?
Sorry.
like recipes, right? Different like recipes you actually can automate.
Yeah, exactly. Recipes, yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of big and smaller things in our roadmap there, and a lot of things are finally getting ready to be released next week, which is quite exciting. And I think that with the not get much users part, I think like there's one project out there that's called No Code DB. I think they're around since like a few years. The first years they didn't get a lot of adoption, and then suddenly it took off like crazy. And so you don't really know what. So I think you can still keep on iterating. I think what the most important thing is really just talk with users, like with the users you have, and the users that churn, and make sure like that you find out why people don't start using it. And so because maybe there's something very simple and you can fix it, but I would probably not give up, and I would just for sure try to release as early as possible. Like I said, in the end, like NLN was very imperfect. I probably also could have launched for sure earlier, and there was like a lot of features that I still wanted to add that are super essential. And then I said, okay, screw it, I gonna do it at a later point. And actually, many of the features are still not released now, and not many people are missing it. So it's like very often you put a lot of work into something that nobody cares about. So I think releasing earlier is good, but it should obviously not be super buggy that people still feel like they can use it. I would still invest some time, like we mentioned earlier, in the UI, that it looks like a professional project that's usable and people want to use. So I would probably not release it before that's done, but then release it, see what people are doing, make sure you have proper documentation, and you provide amazing support. And really make sure that you have, like when I launched NetN, I had at least a basic website ready. I had Discuss set up as a forum, and it allowed me to make sure that I can give support, just answer every question one time and at 1 million times like Slack. I tell everybody, please don't add any real-time communication channels because that's such a time drain. You're never going to get to anything because you answer the same question 1 million times. So I would really add Discuss there. Maybe if you want in the very early beginning, if we don't have many users, you can maybe have a Slack channel because you want to get the direct support there. But if it looks like it's going to be successful, really, I will get rid of it as fast as possible because you're never going to get any work done anymore ever. So I think that the secret is not having a full-time job. Like what I did is like I have a wife and 2 children, so I definitely needed some money. So I cannot just work. Like it's easier if you're single and live with your parents. I had still the advantage. I was living in Berlin, where the living costs are still quite reasonable. So what I did, I worked 2-3 days a week for different startup, normally 10 hours a day, that I get like some 30 hours at least in a week, that allowed me to earn enough money to make sure they can eat and sleep somewhere. And then the rest of the time I could then invest in my own projects, like in this case, NetN.
And how much time did you do that? How much time did you do that for?
For how long? Probably the whole time. I already started it before. Like I said, I was working before on a different startup, Linkfish. And I did it all together like for 3 years, I guess. So you're not going to be rich. Like we didn't have the richest life back then, and we couldn't do a lot of things, but no fancy dinners or anything. But like if it's what you care about, it's going to be worth it. So really make sure you get a 3-day a week job. Some people are freelancing, but I wouldn't. Freelancing, the bad thing is like you always have to look for new jobs. They're going to come back. It's going to be very stressful.
Keep recurring gig,
Exactly. So really take one company, say from the beginning, 2-3 days. If you're a developer, they're still going to do it because they look for good developers like crazy. So it's going to be a good deal for both sides. I didn't charge crazy amounts of money because I thought it was fair like that, and it worked out very well. Okay. With 100 projects, I think like there's should be hopefully still one out there you care more about than others. So I will probably work on that one. If you have still like 5 that you really want to work on, then I really would just start to talk with people. Like I said, make sure it's a problem. You're actually solving nothing that sounds cool, but it's not actually a problem. Make sure it's a problem you're solving that you have yourself, because then you can better test with yourself all the time, and you know what's wrong, and you can iterate much faster if you always have to ask somebody else. Again, like if you still have a lot of projects, talk with other people, see what other problems they are having, and if it solves also their problem, and then I would go with that one.